All right, everybody, we got an update on the tropics for you. We are continuing to watch Tropical Storm Erin as it continues working westward here, currently at 17 miles an hour. Central low pressure is down to 1,004 millibars, and maximum sustained winds is currently at 45. Now, further on down in the track here with the system, we are expected to reach hurricane status here by Friday, and even major hurricane status here by Sunday, something we really need to look into. When taking a look at the latest satellite imagery, you can see that Erin is really starting to blow up with convection, which is a really good indicator that the storm is starting to really pick up in strength. Over the next few days, as Erin continues to work westward, it will be working its way into even warmer waters. Currently, the storm is sitting right around 26 degrees Celsius waters underneath, but it is forecasted to reach those waters in which we could be seeing those 29 degrees Celsius or even warmer. Now, on top of that here, looking at the moisture here in the future forecast, we do not really see much issues moisture-wise. It seems like the system will be holding enough moisture here for the next several days. Doesn't really seem to be much of a concern of lack of moisture. And also around that time, looking at the kinematics or the wind shear, it doesn't really seem like there's going to be a whole lot of wind shear acting against the storm to destabilize and overall weaken the system. Once it approaches out there by the upper Caribbean, I really do believe that we are going to be seeing this system really picking up some strength, as there is little to no things acting against the system, in which it's pretty much just going to be all gas. All right, so now we're working our way over here into the official Hurricane Center cone here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you all straight out, anything beyond this cone is unknown and uncertain of what's going to happen, essentially. So, looking at the cone here, you can see that we do remain a tropical storm over the next several days, expected to turn into a hurricane here pretty much for the morning of Friday. And as we continue working our way into those warmer waters, we are going to continue to see rapid strengthening with this system. And as we approach up here just north of the Virgin Islands and north of the Antilles, this is where we really could get into those waters, which we could see some major hurricane activity really starting to ramp up. Now, the Hurricane Center currently does have in the forecast cone the morning of Sunday being the day in which we are expecting the storm to transition from a Category 2 into a Category 3, which makes it a major hurricane. And by the end of the forecast track here for Monday, we could be seeing sustained winds of around 120 miles an hour with potential gusts up to 150 miles per hour. Okay, so when taking a look here at the spaghetti models here overall, looking at the track, at least for the next 3 or so days, you can see we do have a pretty consistent track here between the models, which really is showing us a pretty good amount of support. So at least for the next 3 days or so, we are pretty solid on where the storm is going to go. However, once we kind of work our way to that 3 to 5 day margin, you can see how the models really do start to split out here, in which, this actually could put areas like Bermuda at potential risk, as the models have been trending out to sea a little bit more. Now, this is still not certain, and obviously Bermuda, there's no reason to panic right now, but definitely need you folks out there to be monitoring this very closely. Now, there also could be a bit of concerns regarding the swelling along the coastlines and some high waves and even rip current concerns for some of the regions out by the Virgin Islands, out there by Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic. Those regions actually could be dealing with a little bit of coastal concerns, despite even being far away from the system. A big storm like this can really generate some really strong waves. All right, so moving on now into these same models, but we're taking a look at the intensity guidance here. And you can see it is all over the place. We have some models remaining this thing a tropical storm for several days. Some other models having this thing becoming a hurricane within the next 24 to 48 hours. There is a lot of disagreement here. Now, taking the median point here, kind of the point of average, you can see that we are going to have some gradual strengthening as we work our way to the west here. With this system, I would not be surprised, once again, that we do achieve major hurricane status. I mean, as you can see, at least half of the models do support this thing getting into at least Category 3 strength. Now, there has been a little bit of growing support in which the system could possibly even become a Category 4 down in time. I'm going to be straight with you guys. I would not be surprised if it does become greater than Category 3, just given the conditions that we get into once we approach into the Northern Caribbean. Because like I mentioned, those waters out there are extremely warm, about 29 degrees Celsius waters. There'll still be plenty enough moisture for deep convection, as well as a lack of wind shear, which would basically prevent the storm from falling apart and destabilizing. Because if you have a lot of strong wind shear, that kind of messes with the storm structure and causes it to fail, but that does not seem to be the case in the future future forecast. Okay, so now we're going to work our way into more of the models in depth here, starting off with the HWRF parent model here. So we're looking at the amount of moisture that's in the atmosphere, and you can see by these bluish-green areas here, this represents an area where we do have a pretty good amount of moisture, and of course, the areas here in the brown, that kind of represents the opposite, showing a bit more drier conditions. So as we work our way down in time here, approaching our way here into tomorrow, you can see we definitely do wrap in a bit of moisture. There could be a little bit of dry air in some parts of the system, but overall, it is relatively saturated here. And, honestly, moisture really doesn't seem to be much of an issue. As the system does work its way here into the Caribbean, you can see it really holds into a lot of moisture and does contain quite a bit, as we will likely see a lot of rapid intensification because of the fact that we do have plenty amounts of moisture, and the temperatures are very, very warm here. Those sea surface temperatures here, we're talking like 28, 29 degrees Celsius waters, in some areas even near 30, which that is very, very warm conditions, allowing for a lot of heat to really get into the storm. So moving things back here a little bit, still taking a look at the HWRF model, we're now taking a look at the simulated infrared. So we can kind of see as we work our way over here to the west, we're going to really start to get this thing going. And it looks like, according to the HWRF, we could see possibly the eye starting to develop here right around the 15th, in which, that's kind of when we are expecting this thing to really pick up some strength here on Friday. So, that is when we are expecting to achieve the hurricane status. But, we continue working our way down in time here, and the system just gets even more nasty here. In the last frame, you can see a pretty large eye here. You can see just north of Puerto Rico, north of the Virgin Islands there, which, that it really is picking up some strength here. And now another thing that I do want to mention here with this model is looking at the wind shear. Now, this really applies to a lot of the models here. And as we work our way down in time, you can actually see that the system really doesn't encounter much wind shear, which would act against the system, causing it to destabilize a bit. Does not seem to be the issue here, which obviously that's a little bit of a concern because, we're not expecting anything to weaken here. The only thing that we have going on is basically that upper level venting here, which is, typical for tropical cyclones, because in the lower parts of the atmosphere, the system rotates counterclockwise, and in the upper portions, it rotates clockwise. All the air going in has to go out, in which it does in those upper levels, in which you can kind of see that clockwise motion up there. So now moving things over here to the HAFSA model, you can see there's really not a whole lot of differences here. This model does have this thing really exploding in activity over the next several days, in which, this model actually has things a little bit aggressive, a little bit more aggressive as we work our way here into the 17th and 18th. You can see, according to this model, the pressure could get down to right around 930 millibars. Now, remember, this is one model. This is one model run. We can't take it too serious, but I just thought I'd point that out. So now we're sliding our way over here into the American GFS model, and really, honestly, the models are pretty much in sync with this system here, really picking up strength once we kind of approach north of the Virgin Islands and, north of Puerto Rico and whatnot, because like I mentioned, those conditions out there are really, really favorable for rapid development. So, like I said, I cannot guarantee this will happen, but I would not be surprised if the system does actually even get above that Category 3 standpoint. So just don't be surprised if you do see it eventually, because, it's actually going to be really working its way into some very, very conducive waters. So we're likely going to see quite a bit of development here out of that system once it works over there. So lastly, looking at the Euro model here, you can see the ECMWF. This one's not as aggressive as, the GFS and literally all the other models before it. I think the ECMWF here is a little bit lacking behind, to be honest with you. I kind of agree with the other models because, most of the other models have this thing getting down into the 950s, 940s, even 930 millibar range, which, this model kind of just shows it getting down into right around 960, almost 970. So, this one's kind of a little bit of an outcast here, but, we'll just have to keep an eye out there for things. But alright, everybody, well, that's going to go ahead and wrap up this video. If you guys did enjoy it, consider leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button. It'll be greatly appreciated. If you guys do want to support us, we do have ways to support us down below. It'd be greatly appreciated. Honestly, it helps keep us rolling, which I'd really, really appreciate it. But just thank you all for joining. If you guys could consider sharing this video to help spread awareness and, make sure we get that hype out of there, and that way you guys can see what's actually going on here. So I just want to say thank you all for joining us. You guys are amazing. Thank you all for hanging out. We'll be live again later tonight, probably right around 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So I hope to see you guys then. And all right, my friends, thank you all for joining. We'll see y'all in the next one. Peace out, my friends. See ya later on.